Joining me tonight, right next to me actually, former New York Ranger general manager, Stanley Cup champion Neil Smith. Neil, thanks for taking the time to be with us.
Great to be here.
Neil, got to say, it's been an interesting last 48 hours here after basically 80 days of doom and gloom, I guess you could say. Everyone thinking that there wouldn't be an NHL hockey season. Last 2 days, definitely a lot of optimism in the air that maybe a deal can be made here in the next couple days, week. I've heard all kinds for 24 hours, 48 hours, a week, 2 weeks. Right now, obviously, the meeting's going on again right now with the players and the owners, minus Gary Bettman and Donald Fehr. But it is interesting what's been going on with the latest bargaining sessions here, the last 48 hours. What do you think about everything that's happened?
Well, it's sort of like the Toronto weather. You know, we had a great day yesterday, and then it's freezing cold today, and it'll get warm again tomorrow. I think that, you know, things like this, in this kind of a negotiation, I think there comes a time when people are saying to each other, let's get a deal done. The players are saying, let's get something done. And the owners are saying, let's get something done. And it's almost like, and if we can't get anything done right now, we're done. We're done for the year. So they're sort of come to that crossroads. Now, the thing that concerns me, Josh, is nothing's really been agreed on.
Yes.
It's just been very friendly. And that's why everybody's getting optimistic, because it had been so confrontational before this.
Why do you think we waited this long, Neil, before we really started getting serious about these negotiations? It just seems that this could have started, you know, not too long after the Stanley Cup Finals, and we waited so long before we actually started having discussions. And I think if they would have started a little bit earlier, maybe we'd actually been playing hockey a couple months ago.
Yeah, but you know, it's all posturing in negotiations. Yeah. It's all posturing about how am I going to get the best deal? How long do I have to wait? I always compared it when I was GM to men in Christmas shopping. They all go out on Christmas Eve and buy the gifts because they didn't know whether they could get a better deal by waiting. So we all waited until the trade deadline. Everybody says, why didn't you make your trades earlier?
Yeah.
I think it's the same thing with this. They're all positioning and posturing and saying, well, if we make the owners wait, they'll give in. And the owners are saying if we make the players miss a paycheck, they'll give in. And then you get to this point where you're almost at Christmas and both are saying, well, I guess they're not going to give in.
Yeah.
So we better do something, and we better give a little and they'll give a little.
If this does continue, Neil, and the discussions keep going, how long do you think, in your opinion, it would take to actually get a deal done?
Well, I got to think that it's going to take at least we're talking Wednesday today. I mean, I would think until if things were going very, very positive, I would think it would take until at least the weekend before they could say we've got a deal in principle, because there's so many things to be done.
Yes.
But I think they've got an enormous gap to bridge, and I'm still not optimistic that they can bridge that gap. If they do, somebody's really giving in on one side or the other tremendously, because this gap was huge between the players and the owners on so many issues, on the contract length, on the make whole, on how long the CBA would last, the term. So there's a lot of major issues that have a very wide gap between them.
And it's going to be interesting too. I mean, I know 2004, 2005, the last lockout, it took, after they had an agreement in principle, it took 9 days before they were playing hockey. But you got to think about it. If they're actually going to be having this deal done. If the deal's done, you have to restructure the whole schedule, and you have to try to sell those tickets. You know, you have to try to basically sell the tickets really fast so you can put butts in the seats for the games. It just seems a lot will need to be done before the game.
Well, there's a tremendous amount, because there's television rights holders that are going to have to switch all their programming around. They're going to have to be consulted with. The buildings are going to have to be consulted with to make sure the dates are all still open. The players all have to get back from Europe. You have to have some kind of training camp for those players like Crosby and those that didn't ever go to Europe. And you're going to have, the coaches are going to want to get their teams together and at least do some practicing for 10 days. There's a lot that will go into this to try to pull it all back together. But I would imagine that the governors, once they get a good feeling that something's going to happen, they'll be calling their coaches and saying, be prepared.
I actually meant to say 94, 95, not 2004, 2005 because there wasn't a season. Yeah, it's going to be interesting. Are we going to start seeing players coming back now? Are they going to wait to the last minute? Or are they going to want to get on the plane?
I was surprised today. I read that Colby Armstrong went,
I saw that.
over to went
East
into
Coast
the
Hockey League.
the ECHL. He signed with the Utah Grizzlies. So I was surprised to see him do that right when things look like they're getting better. But I think the players will stay with those teams, and probably as soon as they find out there really is something, then they'll jump on a plane. I'm sure their contracts allow them to do that.
Yes. With the meetings that happened starting yesterday, we had new owners in the meetings, 4 new owners. Not the usual guys that they had throughout this whole process.
Mm-hmm.
A guy they brought in, Penguins owner Ron Burkle. Definitely everyone's talking about how this guy played a key role yesterday in getting the negotiations moving along. The players always saying from the start that they don't feel that the trust is there with the current owners that they've been dealing with. Bring Burkle in and the trust starts building a little bit. Any reason why you think it took the NHL that long to bring a guy like Burkle in?
Probably because he's seen as a dove, meaning that he wants things to get started, and he's not a hardliner.
Yes.
And the negotiations were probably handled by the Jeremy Jacobs of the world for the NHL side. He's a hardliner. And that's how you always start things off, and you try to back the other side down. I imagine that Ron Burkle and his relationship with Crosby and then Mario Lemieux, those guys came in, and what they made the players feel like was that, yeah, we'll listen to you. We'll listen to you. The players may have felt like they weren't even being listened to by Gary Bettman and the original crew, and that must have led to the frustration. So perhaps just the fact that there was someone sitting in the room that would actually have a dialogue with the players might have made it a rosier picture. But that's not to say that the deal can get done because of that, though.
That's true. Another owner that really wanted to be a part of the negotiations but was not allowed to, and that's Dolan in New York. Do you find it interesting that, kind of silly almost, that Bettman wouldn't bring a guy like that in because of their history over the last couple of years?
Yeah, there's all kinds of politics going on in the NHL, as you well know, and
yes.
Jim Dolan has been known as a loose cannon, and perhaps hadn't served on any committees, and perhaps that's one of the reasons. All of a sudden, are they going to allow him to come into it? It's interesting though that if Gary didn't allow him, or there was what really was the reason, because Gary does work for Jim Dolan. No matter how bad their relationship's been, 1/30 of his paycheck comes from the Rangers. So it would be interesting to know how that was handled.
Neil, we're going to open up the phone lines here for anybody that wants to ask any questions here about maybe what's going on with the lockout, if they want to talk about the Rangers winning the Cup when you were there.
Yeah.
Give us a call. The phone number here is 1-888-999-5880. The lines are now open. I got to also ask you here, Neil, it's interesting that throughout this process, the last 2 days, no Gary Bettman, no Donald Fehr involved in these meetings. They wanted to do the player-owner-only meetings, which is what they were calling it, even though there's Steve Fehr and Bill Daly that have been involved in the meetings as well. But if a deal does get done here, and Gary Bettman and Donald Fehr are not a part of the process, do you think they need to worry about their jobs at all, Neil?
Well, if they're really not part of it, I would think that they needed to worry. But knowing Gary Bettman and knowing the reputation of Donald Fehr, I'm sure they're very, very involved, even though they're not in the room. They're in the room. They're in the room in spirit. I think that what happens in some of these negotiations is if you can get some of the faces that just bring about the feeling of, oh, we'll never get this done because he's here. It's sort of like kids, they sometimes they say, well, I'm not going there if Dad's there. I'm just not going to go because I know he's mad at me and stuff. So then they change it around, and Dad says, well, okay, I won't be there, and then they get it the way they want it. So that I'm sure though that Gary Bettman is pretty safe in his job, and Donald Fehr's very safe in his job.
Interesting. Neil, we do have a call on the line. Hello, caller. Your name, please.
Yeah, Mitch.
Hey, Mitch. How you doing?
All right, how are you?
Good. Mitch, where are you calling from?
From Boca Raton, Florida.
Boca Raton. It's probably a lot nicer there than it is here.
Yeah, for sure.
Mitch, I'm along here with Neil Smith. I'm guessing the question is for Neil because no one cares what I say.
Neil, how you doing? It's a pleasure to talk to you.
Yeah, nice to talk to you.
Actually, you guys should be familiar with Boca Raton. Didn't you just have meetings here in the last couple years or a few years ago?
Well, I've been to Boca Raton many times. I can't remember when the last time was that I was here, and you lived in Florida, Josh,
Yeah.
so you're familiar. It's a beautiful spot. I'm jealous because we're below freezing here in Toronto.
Okay, then I won't tell you how nice it is here. But anyway, a couple questions for you. Before I talk about the lockout, I do have a question that probably a lot of fans want to know. When a player goes to Europe, what kind of insurance does he have to take out? Gosh forbid, it's a superstar like Malkin or something, and he hurts himself. And now, let's say the lockout ends, and now he can't play for Pittsburgh. What happens there? How does that work?
Well, if the player got hurt playing in, no matter what he was doing in life, if he can't pass the physical when he comes to training camp, once the NHL gets started, the NHL club doesn't have to pay him until he can pass his physical. That's part of the contract. So that's his downside, is that if he got hurt and gets to the NHL team and can't pass the physical, then he's got to do rehab until he's able to do that. I would think insurance-wise, I would think that the part of the contract that the player would make with the European team is that they would insure him that if he got hurt and had to miss time and therefore lost any money at all, that they would have to look after that. So that probably is taken care of in that negotiation with his agent and the European team.
Okay, all right, thanks. The main question is, I personally, I'm lucky. I get to travel a lot, and a lot of my business is done in Pennsylvania. I get to see my hockey because if I'm up there on a Wednesday, Thursday, I'll stay over for the weekend, and I'll catch a Hershey or I'll catch Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania. And I'm sure there's a couple spots that you've been to, and you've seen that they draw, especially Hershey, 10, 11,000 people a game. So I'm lucky. I still get to see my American Hockey League, but what kind of irreparable harm, and you know what, you can say, well, the hockey comes back, fans will be back there, but at this point, when you're 2 months to almost 3 months down the road, and people have allocated maybe their money elsewhere, what kind of harm do you think this could have or will have?
I think it definitely sets you back. It sets back the National Hockey League. How far it sets them back, I'm really not sure. This has been a discussion I've had in recent days quite a few times. In 2004, 2005, when they came back for 5-6, they came back with a whole bag of tricks of a new logo, no red line, the trapezoid behind the net. If you put it over the glass, you got a penalty. All these different rules came in, and everybody said, oh, it's a new NHL. I'm wondering what kind of tricks they're going to come back with this time to tell the people you should get excited again. And also, this is the second time. You know that old expression, which I always get wrong, of burn me once, shame on you, burn me twice, shame on me. That's almost the way I see it with the fans right now. They've got to be ticked off that, this has happened to them now twice in recent memory. And I think they're going to lose some peripheral fans. They're not going to lose hardcore fans, of course, but they are going to lose some peripheral guys. And there's going to be people that are just ticked off and say, to hell with it. I'm not going to go and make these guys into multimillionaires by paying the ticket prices they want. I'm going to go. I've already found something else to do, and my family's found out we can live without hockey. So the league's going to have to, dig hard and work hard over the next couple of years to get those fans back or replacements for those fans for sure. There's no doubt that this kind of situation hurts you when you're the number 4 major league sport.
Right. And the second part of the question, then I'll hang up and listen to your answer. I appreciate the time you're giving me, Josh.
No problem.
When you talk about you have 30 teams and you have, maybe 10 premium, 10 in the middle who maybe depend on the playoffs, and 10 who are disasters, okay? We certainly consider South Florida down here one of the disaster teams. I hate to say it. But nonetheless, do you think the bottom 10 hurts the worst because you already have a hard time drawing, and now with this type of situation, it certainly is not going to help it. Thanks, and I'll listen to your comments. Thank you.
Thanks.
Neil.
Well, I think it does hurt the bottom feeders the worst. I owned a team in Greenville, South Carolina, and we were in first place for 2 years, and we had trouble drawing people in a small town. So if you're in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and you've got a team that has missed the playoffs for 7 straight years or 8 straight years, and then made it last year, and had a great, I think, what was a great turnaround with Kevin Dineen. It's still, there's so much to do in these warm climates that leads you away from it. If you're the Phoenix Coyotes, you're worried that you were just building some momentum with Dave Tippett and the season that the Coyotes had, and almost getting all the way through to the finals, and now you've lost that momentum, and maybe those people have found somewhere else to go. You're not going to worry about it in Detroit, and of course the economy hurts you in Detroit, but you're not going to worry about it in Montreal, Toronto, New York, Boston, Philadelphia, and places where, even Pittsburgh, where hockey is part of the winter culture. But in the places where it's not a part of the culture and you can live without it, boy, that's tough sledding for those teams to get those fans back.
Unreal. Mitch, thanks for joining us on the show. We're going to head to break, but before we do, Neil, just got an update here from Helen St. James in Detroit. She's got a source that's saying, not looking great after latest talks tonight between owners and players. So,
wow.
Yeah.
Well, we'll see.
It's going to be an up and down roller coaster,
it's up
right?
and down. It's like the weather. I'm telling you, like people go outside and they go, oh, the weather's crummy. Oh, the sun's out. Oh, no, the sun's back in.
Yeah.
What's it going to be like tomorrow? Who knows?
Unreal. Well, we're going to head to break, Neil. We'll continue part 2 of this when we get back from break. You're watching the Nightcap on nextsportstar.com. We'll be right back.